Mit diesen Worten freue ich mich jetzt, die Bühne an Ehud zu übergeben. Please come to the stage. You will speak in English, but I know we can manage this. Thank you, Mr. Olmert. Thanks for being here. A warm welcome to Hannover, to the Green Party. Thank you. You have to go very close.
Thank you very much, Francisca. Thank you for inviting me and my Palestinian partner to the conference of the Green Party. I must say I'm not involved in political life in other countries, but I'm very impressed with the forceful leadership that you manifest, particularly with regard to the issues which are so important for us in the Middle East, Israelis and Palestinians. Distinguished delegates and my friend and partner, Dr. Nasel Kidwa, I'm very proud to share the stage with you, even though you are at a certain distance. But we have the same ambition and the same desire and the same hope that our joint efforts will help bring closer the conclusion for the historical conflict between Israel and Palestine. The war in Gaza was unavoidable and inevitable, considering the brutal, horrific attack of Hamas that killed 1,200 Israeli citizens in their homes, in their bedrooms, in the living rooms, children, their parents, their grandparents, in one of the most brutal terrorist attacks in modern history. The Israeli counteroffensive was, under those circumstances, inevitable, and it was supported at that time by the international community across the world, everywhere, in America, in Europe, for good reasons. However, now we are almost slightly more than 2 years after the events in October. And due to the efforts, particularly of the United States President, we now have a ceasefire in Gaza. I must say that the ceasefire is fragile, and we hope it will be stable and it will end permanently the military conflict in Gaza. This is just the beginning. I know that President Trump calls this the peace agreement, but the truth of the matter is that at this stage now, this is a ceasefire agreement, and we hope that it will develop into something bigger and larger. In order for this to happen, there ought to be a security force made up of Palestinians and of possibly also participants from moderate Arab countries, maybe also Europeans, that will take over the security control of Gaza in order to make sure that under no circumstances Hamas can rise again into any political and military position in Gaza. This is essential in order to prevent the return of what happened in the past also in the future. And then, of course, there ought to be a new government in Gaza. This government has to be Palestinian because Gaza is part of Palestine. And when there will be a security force and a new technocratic government that will have to be approved by the Palestinian Authority, but will be in control of Gaza, then Israel, of course, has to pull out completely into the line wherefrom the war started. Now, in July of 2024, I and Dr. Nasel Kidwa, together we issued a joint statement that proposed the basic principles of the end of the war in Gaza, and then also which is the strategy that we are fighting for and working for, the beginning of a dialogue that will end up with a comprehensive peace agreement between Israel and Palestine on the basis of two states. The truth is that there was time spent and wasted. The truth of the matter is that there was no reason why the end of the war was not announced a year and a half before, and the beginning of the efforts by the international community could have started long before. But the question now is, where do we go from here? And what should be done in order to make sure that the war in Gaza will be the last time that Israelis and Palestinians fight against each other? In 2008, at the time that I was Prime Minister of Israel, I negotiated with the President of the Palestinian Authority, Dr. Mahmoud Abbas, for 3 years. In the course of these negotiations, we also had this famous conference in Annapolis that was led by the then President of the United States, George W. Bush. And at the end of this process, towards the end of this process, I presented Mahmoud Abbas with a peace plan, the core of which, the essence of which, was a solution on the basis of two states, with borders similar, actually, in terms of the size of territory, identical to the 67 borders, and with the Arab side of Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. Unfortunately, also, which is not insignificant, in my plan, I proposed that the old city of Jerusalem and all the holy places which are sacred to Christians, to Muslims, and to Jews will not be under the exclusive political sovereignty of any country, not of Israel and not of Palestine, but that it will be administered by a trust of 5 or maybe more nations, including Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Palestine, Israel, and America, under the auspices of the United Nations Security Council. Unfortunately, at that time, it was not concluded. I don't want to go now into the reasons and to blame the other side. I'm not there. I'm looking forward and not backward. And the political plan that we share, Dr. Kidwa and myself, is largely based on the principles of my initiative in 2008. Now the question is, how do we move from here? I think that the efforts made by European countries were very impressive and significant in pushing forward the idea of a two-state solution. I know that there are many who are doubting whether this is applicable, whether this is practical, whether this can actually be implemented. And my perception, and you will hear shortly Dr. Kidwa, that there is no alternative for a political solution. The choice that we have to make, all of us, is between continuing the status quo that existed up until the 7th of October and the situation now where there is an Israeli army on the yellow line and the Hamas on the other side, and it is likely to erupt into hostilities every day, and then it will continue and continue and continue, and you have had it already for almost 60 years since the Six-Day War, in which Israel took over control over these territories. So the only possible alternative is a two-state solution. And therefore, the diplomatic efforts which were conducted by Europeans, starting with President Macron and the Saudis and the conventions in the United States, were very significant. And the support of other countries in the vote in the General Assembly of the United Nations was also a very important step forward. But now there must be an additional effort. And I believe that it is now incumbent upon President Trump to use his power of persuasion to move forward from a ceasefire into a permanent end of the war, and then a beginning of negotiations between Israel and Palestine, in the course of which normalization between Israel, Palestine, moderate Arab countries, and the Saudis will take place, which will change the balance in the Middle East on a more permanent basis. This is the strategy. With all due respect to all of the other leaders, including the European leaders, it appears to me that the one person that has the power to force the sides to embark on negotiations is President Trump. I hope that he knows it. I hope that he is prepared to use his power of persuasion in the right direction. And I promise you that Dr. Kidwa and myself will continue to go everywhere in the world where we can share our vision, our commitment, our desires, and our hope to end once and for all this historic conflict and to start a new life for us and for many Palestinians that deserve to exercise their right of self-determination, and also of the entire region. At the end of the day, when I talk about two states, I talk about two states not because I think that this is something that only is important for the Palestinians. It is. But first and foremost, I think that this is the national interest of the State of Israel, because it will bring an end to this conflict, and an end to this conflict is what we need and what they need. And we will continue to work, and I want to thank all of you and your leaders, and particularly Francesca, for making such an exceptional effort in order to spread this vision and to support these efforts, and hopefully we will celebrate, all of us, soon enough. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much. I'm not the announcer, but I think that now you should listen to my Palestinian partner, Dr. Kidwa. Thank you.
Okay.